Welcome back. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about edTPA, what it is, how to do it. If you are a fellow student teacher or an education major, this applies more toward the special education edTPA because they're all different. Middle school, elementary school, high school, and SPED all have different edTPAs, but they're basically the same thing. If you don't know what edTPA is, it's essentially a portfolio that you put together for your teaching experience in order to get certified. So that means that you have several parts, because it's a portfolio, including different lesson plans. They call them tasks. So essentially you're planning, you're doing it, and then you're analyzing. So what are you planning? You're planning a unit of learning. So this is how it works for special education. You're planning a unit of learning. So it's probably 3 to 5 days. 3 is the minimum, 5 is the maximum. And you can fall anywhere in that range. Nothing is wrong about 3 or 5, just somewhere in that range. And then you're going to do the actual lesson with your class, with your student teaching class. And then you're going to analyze the results. You're going to analyze what the students learned, how did they learn it, and what proof do you have to show that they actually did learn something and their performance of that. So for this one, it's probably going to be a series because edTPA is a really big portfolio to tackle. In the UGA program, you take different seminars on it. You take mock edTPAs, or you do mock edTPAs, and it's not something I can really talk all about in one video. So I'm going to break it down, and so this one is just going to be overall edTPA hacks, tips that I have learned along the way and what I would tell other people. And then the other ones are going to be more about task 2, task 3, and I'll touch on task 1 in this one as well as the lesson plan. So let's get into it. So a little bit of background, I recently just passed my edTPA. I got my score back a few weeks ago, and I hit the first submission deadline. So if you're starting edTPA, in your program, you're going to be told, at least at UGA, we were told 2 different goal deadlines to submit our edTPA in. And you're not even just submitting it to your university, you're submitting it into Pearson. So Pearson is the one that's running this whole thing, and they're going to send your edTPA off to an outside teacher or person who's trained to specifically grade edTPA portfolios, and that's how you're going to get your grade or your score. No one at your college or your university should be seeing your edTPA before you're sending it off. They're making it a very big rule. It's pretty strict. You cannot get help on it. So this has to be your work. No one can write it for you, no one can plan it for you, and no one can do it for you. You have to be doing this by yourself. So after you are assigned to do edTPA, you know you're going to do it. Typically you're doing it in the spring if you're following like a 4 full year college, like I guess just like college experience. If you're graduating in December, you'll be doing it in the fall. But so I followed the typical 4 full years of college, and that meant over winter break, I knew when I came back in January I was going to have to start my edTPA. I wanted it to get it done as fast as possible because I knew how stressful it could be if I just left it lingering. So tip number 1, start as early as you can. So over winter break, I found out that I was replaced at my same placement that I was at the fall. And that was a super helpful thing because that meant I already knew the students, I knew what disabilities they had, what I needed to do to provide them with the right teaching and the right resources in order for them to succeed in the classroom already. So if you're someone who's going into a new classroom, you can't really do what I did over winter break. So if you have the option to stay on at the same school from the fall to the spring, I highly recommend. So how did this help me? So over winter break, I already knew, okay, I wanted to work with this student, and I knew what disabilities he had. I knew how I could form a lesson in order to help him and maximize his learning, and therefore I could already fill out a context for learning. That's going to be your very first thing you're going to do when you have to start your real edTPA, context for learning. So context for learning is a maximum of 4 pages, and it's just background. All it is you're not getting scored on it really at all. It has to be completed. It should be detailed. So you're just doing background on your student, your school, and you like have to put if it's your like a rural area or a suburban area, city, or age of your student, their classified disability, IEP accommodations, testing accommodations, everything like that. You're going to put all of that in context for learning. After that, and I would say, so context for learning, sorry, I'm going to rewind. Context for learning, like I said, is a maximum of, I believe, 4 pages. I'll put below if I'm wrong. It's 4 pages, and I'm a slow writer, so this is also why I wanted to start early. This took me, I think I sat down and I cranked it out in about 2 hours. That might be a lot longer than what you need. It might be shorter than what you need. It's just person by person. I know I write slowly, and I was referring to my student's IEP, which you have to get permission to do that. So I was referring to my student's IEP. I was writing down his accommodations. I was writing down what I knew about him already, his cultural stuff, his family life. Like, this is why it was really beneficial to have already gone close to my student over the course of the fall and bring it into my edTPA in January. Tip number 2. As a student teacher, you really want to express how you've gotten to form a relationship with a student, and you want it to be something like this. I planned XYZ for my student because in the past I have seen ABC and know XYZ will help him succeed more. You're just wanting to prove that you have a relationship with your student and that you know what is best for your students to be able to learn. And that ties in because you don't want to, if you have a challenging relationship with a student, and that's always going to happen, even in student teaching. I know for my edTPA to be as smooth and as good as I could make it, I should choose a student, who I have formed a good relationship with. Number 3 for broad edTPA, know that you are going to have to put in the work. So the first day of student teaching, I got there and I already knew who I wanted to do my edTPA based around, and I knew I should get my context for learning cranked out if I hadn't done it already. I think I just had to finish one more page. And that was the first day of student teaching. So during my lunch break, I sat down with my planner and I literally wrote, okay, 2 weeks from now, I want all of my lesson plans done. 2 weeks after that, I want task 1 done. 2 weeks after that, I want task 2 done. And 2 weeks after that, I want task 3 done. The way I planned it, got me to the first submission date. The earlier you submit it, the earlier you're going to get your results back. And there are times where students have had to redo parts of their edTPA. It's not bad if you have to. People do all the time. But I can literally show you, I have my planner here that I've used so much, is starting in January, task 1 due. And I have it every week. Finish half of task 1, finish task 1. So I really broke it down so that I could visually see on my lesson, this is what I need to do this week, this is what I need to get done, and I'm going to have to do what I need to do in order to get it done. So some tips for getting your work done. So a lot of things that I did made me sacrifice certain parts of my life, and honestly I cut out a lot of sleep. So my school, I had to be there around 7:30 to 7:45 just every morning, and because the first bell rung at 8, students were in the classroom at 8:15, and you have to be there during teaching hours. So what I did is I would get to school extra early on days I knew I needed to work on edTPA. I would get there early, I would be let in, I would sit there, eat breakfast I brought, and I would work on edTPA from, let's say I got there at 7:20 to 7:45, and then I would head to the classroom where the students didn't get there until about 8:15 into the classroom, and I would sit there and work on edTPA there. So really utilizing different little time slots you can find, even if it's 45 minutes here, an hour there, an hour here, it's going to really compile so that you don't have to be it doesn't come down to the last 2 weeks and you're like, oh no, I have 2 weeks to get all of this done. I can't do anything for the next 2 weeks. So that really allowed me to make my schedule a little bit more flexible and helped me still have a social life during this time too. Another thing I did on weekends is if I had a lot due that week, because you're also having assignments on top of it, I would wake up early. I was already waking up early anyway for school. I'd wake up at 5:45 and my body just got used to waking up. So on the weekends I'd wake up around like 8:30, and I would do work until like 11:30 at least, until my roommates were up, my friends were up, and we wanted to go do something, either get brunch or something like that, or I'd be like, no guys, like I can't do anything today until like 3, like I just really need to lock myself in my room and get my work done. And that's just what it's going to be like until I finish edTPA. So I did that most Saturdays and Sundays. And because of that, when I got home from student teaching, I really took that time to just relax. Because on Saturdays and Sundays, I wasn't already exhausted when I woke up, because I wouldn't have had worked out and rushed to make it to school on time. Like, sleep in a little bit and do your work. Another thing I did a lot, which some student teachers don't have this luxury, is we had a planning period where we didn't have any students, so I had 50 minutes every day to do work. So honestly, I was just really sleep deprived for a really long time. It sucked, but it was worth it because I got it done early, and that's honestly one of the biggest things I am proud about that I did this semester, is that I really put in the work. I really found different pieces of time that I could do my work, make it just happen, and hit that early submission date. So for everyone, not just special ed, there's multiple different submission dates, and they're throughout the spring and summer and fall too, I believe. But they're throughout the semester that you're doing your edTPA, and your school might like, they're not required, but they kind of recommend different dates to keep you on track, and that's what UGA did. And there was one in February, which was the first submission date, and then there was one in March that was over our spring break. I didn't want to do that one because, one, I wanted to take spring break. I went to Aruba with my best friend, another story for another time, and then so I knew I wanted to hit that first one because I didn't want to have to be doing this the rest of my student teaching. So that's really what I focused on the first half of our semester, and something I really recommend to anybody doing it. Let's see, what else is there? So this is something, before I start getting into task 1, or the lesson plans actually, I want to stress that confidentiality is key. So if you can't get a student's IEP legally, really, by just going in and getting it yourself. So you have to have at least your teacher's permission, and because they have to log in on, I think we have like Go IEP where I was at, and they have to log in, they can print it for you, and then you have to white out the student's name, their full name, their birthday, where they live, the school, everything like that. And honestly, what my mentor teacher did, which I think was on like what every mentor teacher should, is they contacted the student that I used as my focus learner, and he asked his parents if it was okay that I had access to IEP and have him be my focus learner, because I think it's, one, I was in a middle school, like I said, so the student could not give that permission by himself, and two, I think it's just really good to let the parents know what's going on in their student's life, and that their student is going to be my focus learner. So even he was in my video, but that's another thing. You have to have video consent forms sent out to the entire class. That's something I'll talk about when I talk about task 2. So now that I've gotten a lot of run-on sentences about context for learning and edTPA in general, let's just dive into the lesson plans. Okay, I'm kind of going rogue on this because I don't have notes planned, so this might be bad, but let's try. So, lesson plans. So you can, like I said, have 3 to 5 days of lessons. So I personally did 4, and that means I wrote 4 days worth of lesson plans. even if your last day is just testing, you still have to write a lesson plan for that day. Some of the girls, my cohort with me, asked me that question because I'd already turned mine in, and I was like, yes, you have to write your lesson plan for that last day, even if it's just a test. So don't forget that. And also, lesson plans can only be 4 pages long. So if you're someone like me who likes to script out literally everything in your lesson plan, you can't do that anymore. So when I was turning in lesson plans outside of my edTPA practice for like other classes, they were like 12, 14 pages long because I was literally writing out every single thing, like the questions I would ask, the student's response, good morning kids, how are you, everything that you can think of that I would say was already scripted out. So you really have to compact that a little bit. You can't really script it out that much, but I will say I would write, like what I did is I put in quotes the questions I wrote for my lesson plan that I would ask my students, because I think that really gives the grader a look into what you would actually be doing in your lesson, and then they compare that to your video. So I would still script that out, but as far as it goes, instead of saying good morning kids, how are you, like anything like that, it should be like greet class and begin lesson, or like begin review, or begin warm up, or how students work on their daily work, or like something like that, instead of completely scripting everything out. Also, in the lesson plan itself, in order to save some space, I cut out like essentially spaces. So like I'd have spaces between words, and that was it. You have to cut out like your pretty formats and your organization, kind of like that. Like it needs to be compact, but it needs to be legible. It should make sense. It doesn't have to be full sentences, but it should make sense. And you should know where, if you're handing this to someone and telling a sub, go do this lesson, the sub should know how to do it by reading what you wrote. So you still need to make it a good lesson plan, but you can't have like all of those spaces in between each section. I hope that makes sense. Okay, another part of lesson plans. So you have your objective goal, and that's going to be your goal of the whole unit, and then you're going to have your daily lesson goals. And so those daily goals should be explicit, or all of the goals should be explicit, understandable, easy to read, and easy to measure. So you can't say, Jack will be proficient in English at the end of this lesson. No, not gonna work. What you could do, and mine was not in English, I was in math, like I've said, so this is just completely pulling out of my head. What you could do is, Jack will show proficiency in vocabulary, or in building his vocabulary, whatever kind of standard you're working on, by correctly selecting 6 out of 7 definitions on the daily quiz. Something like that. You know exactly what he's doing, how it shows he's proficient. So he's proficient by correctly choosing those definitions, and measurable 5 out of 6 or 5 out of 7, whatever it is. And so those are the key parts you want in every goal. You have to connect your overall goal to your daily goals. So what I did is every day was a new learning day, a new piece of the unit. So first day, second day, third day, they were learning different things. The fourth day was a test of all those 3 different things. So the fourth day's overall, or like daily learning goal was the same as the overall learning goal. Meaning, so if I did 4 days, right, so that's 4 different goals, plus my overall goal, I had 5 different goals, but 2 of them were exactly the same. The fourth day and the overall learning goal were exactly the same. So I really only had 4 unique goals. Your days can be unique from the overall learning goal, but your overall learning goal does need to tie in the daily learnings, or the daily learning goals. And yeah, that's really what I have about lesson plans. Make them descriptive, put in detail, but remember they can only be 4 pages long each. So yeah. So that is it for my first edTPA. It's going to get better. You're going to submit it. You're going to pass. Even if it's not the first time around, you can redo parts of it, so don't stress. So yeah. Thanks for watching.